Morning, everyone. It's 9 o'clock now. I would like to ask for 2 minutes, so that other participants can join the session. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar, which is titled A Guide to Building Registration onto the National Building Energy Performance Register, also known as the NBPR, which is hosted and maintained by SANEDI. This webinar, as we all know, is a guide. It has been used to guide you as our esteemed stakeholders to actually navigate and also use the registration portal onto the NBPR. So as we go into our agenda for today, this is how it goes. We have welcoming and opening remarks, which will be led by our acting general manager, who is Mr. Teslim Yusuf. Then we will go onto the background of EPCs and the status as well, which is led by Ms. Nobile Ngoba. Then we will have the registration process as well as the data requirements for registering your building, which will be led by Mr. Leslie Ramaila. Then we will have a 10-minute comfort break. Then we will proceed to the guide and demonstration onto the online NBPR. Then we will have a Q&A session. Then we will have our closing remarks. Before we start, just some housekeeping rules. We have, if you look at your bottom screen, you have a chat box, then you have a Q&A box. When you would like to make a comment, you can use our chat box, but for questions, please use the Q&A box. We will only attend to questions that are populated or asked on the Q&A box. I'm sorry because I forgot to introduce myself. I am Sino Vuyonochi and the moderator of this session. As we start our session for today, I will hand over to Mr. Teslim Yusuf to take the floor. Mr. Yusuf, you may take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sinovuyo. Thank you and welcome to everyone. Just a small correction. I'm not more acting in that capacity. We now have a new general manager, Faith Makchawa. She'll be joining us from tomorrow, but I'll be taking this session. Thank you once again for joining us. It's a Monday morning. Mondays are my best days. It's a brilliant start to the week. This is our second webinar we've been organizing on EPCs. And this webinar is focused around the registration portal that we are launching. I'll just take you through SANEDI's mandate for those of you who are new to SANEDI. It's very surprising. I still go out and find people that do not know SANEDI. So SANEDI is a state-owned entity. It's a Schedule 3 entity. We are directly an agency of the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. They have a long list of entities within that list. We're one of them. I just put out 3 very core areas of our mandate: energy research and development. We look at it across the whole of the energy field, not just electricity, every field of energy. We also promote research and technology innovation. We have a unit that does that. It's called the Applied Research and Innovation Unit. That's headed by Professor Modley. We also undertake measures to promote energy efficiency throughout the economy. And I mean, from everything, from industrial processes to your electricity sector, building sector, and different sectors, we look at everything. At the bottom there, it just shows you our core strategic areas that we focus on: contributing to sustainable energy solutions, building energy expertise in the industry, thought leadership. You'll find us in a lot of conferences. And then we have also capacitating an effective and sustainable operational environment. We work very closely with municipalities and different public entities to support that. And then lastly, we inform and increase awareness, and that is today's session. In the next slide, this is the energy efficiency program at SANEDI. This program has been increased. There are some new areas you will start to see over time, but there are 5 core areas in energy efficiency at SANEDI sub-program. We have your 12L tax incentives that looks at industrial energy, optics, within companies adopting the 12L tax incentives. That's your carrot approach to moving entities into adopting energy efficiency. You have your cool surfaces and insulation. That's the new name of the program. And that sub-program looks at the application of paint, certain types of paint on rooftop and surfaces to support with reduction in energy use by reducing the ambient temperature within those buildings or entities. And then you have your energy performance certificates, the sub-program today that is leading this initiative, and that looks at the regulation that came out in December 2020. Then we have your EXCO, your energy service company market development. Very interesting program looking at SMME development, also looking at a database of energy service companies that go out to carry out the installations, the energy efficiency installations. It also goes beyond that, but those are the core areas for that. And then we have standards and labeling looking at energy efficient appliances within the building envelope. We have standards, regulation that we sort of abide by, and we're trying to introduce a lot of efficient products in that sphere. When you look at energy efficiency at CNEDI or across the country, it's always about regulation standards, the data sets we use, SMME development, collaboration and partnerships, and active public participation. That sums up what we do in the energy efficiency program at CNEDI. Today's session is very, very important. We already have the National Energy Building Performance Register at CNEDI. It's quite a manual process. You send an email to start the process. Now we're developing the online system that allows you at the comfort of your home and offices to be able to go online and register your buildings. Today's session is about your registration of your buildings. Do not mix it up. It's not about the certification of the building. It's about the registration. So it's a training session focused around helping you get your buildings registered and complying to that regulation within 12 months. That time is ticking away. This training session does not cover everything around EPCs, so you'll still need to attend further sessions either organized by CNEDI or other institutions that do training. So thank you once again for taking your time out on a Monday morning to find this important. It says a lot about your persons and how you always want to comply to regulation. I hope you enjoyed today's session. I will now hand it over back to the moderator. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Yusuf, for that warm introduction as well as warm welcoming to our esteemed stakeholders. Now we will move forward to EPC background as well as the status of the NBPR, which is led by Ms. Mobile Ngcobo, who oversees the EPC program here at CNEDI. Ms. Ngcobo, you may take over.
Thank you very much, moderator, and good morning once again. Thank you for joining us. So into today's webinar, the purpose of today's webinar is to take you through the registration of buildings onto our online platform. However, one cannot go into that process without having an understanding of where the program or the regulation came about, what is the purpose of it, and where we currently are in South Africa in terms of EPCs and complying to the regulation. So just to start it off, this is the outline of the presentation. So we'll go through the regulatory framework, the regulation itself, the role players, the buildings that need to comply or that the regulation applies to. And since it's a regulation, there's also liability if you don't comply. So we'll take you through that. Then I'll take you through the application process, how to actually go about getting an EPC for your building, because it does not end at building registration. However, we do want you to have that certificate displayed at the entrance of your building and also have a certified copy submitted to CNEDI within 3 months, which I will go over. Then I'll also be showing you our dashboard. So this is taken from the National Building Energy Performance Register to show you the status or the landscape of EPCs within this country. And then my colleague will take you through building registration, the requirements, and then we will then do a demo of the platform. So when you look at the regulatory framework in terms of EPCs, so the regulation actually comes from the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, who is the custodian of all energy policies within South Africa. They also ensure that compliance is met by conducting compliance monitoring. And this is within regards to EPCs. So they have to ensure that EPCs are being displayed and certified copies are being submitted to SANEDI. And then, in as much as they regulate the regulation, they also want to ensure that they do stakeholder engagements so that implementation of this regulation can be met or done within the industry. And then SANEDI, as Mr. Yusuf had stated, is implementing agency of the DMRE, and we have been mandated through this regulation to host and maintain the National Building Energy Performance Register. We conduct research and policy formation or inputs. We also do stakeholder engagements as we are doing today, and then we respond to any regulatory requirements. So anything that the regulation requires SANEDI to do, we are mandated to do it accordingly. Then I will just give you a background of the regulation. So it was promulgated on the 8th of December, 2020, by the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, stating that all buildings that fall within the regulation must display and submit the EPCs from that time up until 7 December 2022, meaning that all buildings which are privately owned and are non-residential with a square floor area or a net floor area of 2,000 square meters and above, and buildings which are government owned, operated, or occupied with a net floor area of 1,000 square meters and above should adhere to this regulation. Then on the 25th of November 2022, an amendment regulation was promulgated, which extended the deadline to 7 December 2025. Now it means that building owners and accounting officers were now given an additional 3 years to comply to the regulation. However, now we are already approaching 1 year after the amendments, meaning that now we are left with less than 3 years, so just above 2 years to comply to the regulation. And then on the 3rd of August, a second amendment was promulgated, which now introduced compulsory registration of buildings, meaning that building owners and accounting officers need to register the type and size of their buildings on the National Building Energy Performance Register within 12 months from date of promulgation. So within this second amendment as well, there were certain definitions which were updated. So the definition of accounting officer was updated, the definition of accredited body was updated, and the definition of energy performance certificates was also updated. So now an EPC is a certificate which is issued by an accredited body prior to 31 July 2024, and thereafter by a registered professional in respect of a building in accordance with SANS 1544. So that definition, or the updates of that definition, is a very big update, which one needs to really consider when conducting or wanting to embark on getting an EPC for their building. And then just to highlight SANEDI's role within this regulation is that we are mandated to maintain the National Building Energy Performance Register, which must include the particulars of all buildings that fall within the regulated classification, as well as relevant energy performance certificate data. Then when you look at the role players within the EPC space, is that it's not limited to the DMRE and SANEDI. We also have other role players which play a very integral part in terms of ensuring that compliance is met and that EPCs are implemented within South Africa. So I've already spoken about the DMRE, who's responsible for the regulation, and then SANEDI, who's responsible for hosting and maintaining the NPPR, but their functions are not limited to what I've highlighted. We also have the South African Bureau of Standards, who is involved in developing the standards for energy performance certificates. So all EPCs must be issued in accordance to SANS 1544 of 2014, which is a standard for energy performance certificates. And then we also use SANS 10400XA of 2021, which which is one of the building codes for the national building regulations. However, because we are dealing with buildings, we need to use that standard to reference certain aspects such as the benchmarks and the energy zones and so forth. And then we look at SANIS. SANIS's role as a South African national accreditation system is to set out criteria around inspection bodies and carry out accreditations of those institutions who want to become inspection bodies or other accreditation bodies. And in this regard, it means that they will be required to issue EPCs. So the bodies that are allowed to issue EPCs are bodies which are accredited by SANIS. So they need to be SANIS accredited inspection bodies within the EPC field. Then when you look at the registered professionals, as I'd stated, that registered professionals will be effective from the 1st of August 2024. So this is in accordance to the amendment regulation, notice 1937 of 2023, which means that a registered professional is an individual professional registered by the South African National Energy Development Institute, SANEDI. The processes and the requirements of these professionals are still being developed between ourselves, the DMRE, and other key stakeholders within the sector. They are not out in the public yet. We are planning to have them published in the near future, well before the amendment regulation kicks in place, or the registered professionals actually kicking in place. So the requirements and processes for those registered professionals will be communicated in the near future. And then when you look at the recipients of the regulation, which are your building owners and accounting officers, and these individuals or entities are responsible for registering the size and type of their buildings onto the National Building Energy Performance Register, but most importantly, complying to the mandatory display and submission of EPCs, whereby they must be displayed at the entrance of their buildings, and that certified copy must be submitted to SANEDI within 3 months from date of issue. So now I will just be taking you through the buildings which need to apply to, or which the regulation applies to. So as I stated in my second slide, that it's public buildings which are owned, operated, or occupied by an organ of state and must have a net floor area of 1,000 square meters or more. Private buildings which are not owned, operated, or occupied by an organ of state with a net floor area of 2,000 square meters and more. So these buildings it doesn't apply to residential buildings. It only applies to public buildings and commercial buildings which are publicly owned or privately owned. And then in addition as well, that these buildings must have been in existence. So it does not talk to new build. This regulation is intended for existing buildings, meaning that these buildings must have been in operation for 2 years or longer and have not been subjected to a major renovation or change of occupancy within those 2 years of operation. Then when you look at the occupancy classifications, there are 2 4 occupancy classes, meaning that the regulation speaks to buildings that offer these occupancy classes. So it's either a building that offers entertainment and public assembly, it offers either a theatrical and indoor sports, it must either be a place of instruction, or it must be an office. So as you can see on the far right-hand side, the examples of the different classifications. So when you talk about A1 being entertainment and public assembly, you look at your restaurants, you look at your halls, or any buildings whereby persons will gather or in many for either entertainment or for any other purpose. Then when you look at your theatrical and indoor sports, it must either be a theater, a cinema, or a gym facility. Then when you look at your places of instruction, it's your universities, your primary schools, or your secondary schools. And then when you look at your offices, so it can be a large multi-story office building, it can be a campus of buildings which have offices, or a standalone block within a office campus or an office block. Then, as I had stated earlier, that this is a regulation which came from government, and if one does not adhere to the regulation, then they will be liable for non-compliance. So if one fails to adhere to this regulation, it means that they are in contravention of the National Energy Act, which is Act number 34 of 2008. And it means that if you fail to publicly display your EPC or EPCs, you fail to submit a certified copy to SANEDI within 3 months from date of issue, and if you fail to register the type and size of your building onto the NBEPR before the 2nd of or by the 2nd of August 2024, means that you're in contravention of the National Energy Act. Therefore, you will be liable for a fine not exceeding 5 million rand, imprisonment not exceeding 5 years, or both such fine and imprisonment. So you need to ensure that if your entity owns, operates, or occupies buildings that fall within the requirements of the regulation, as stipulated, or as I explained earlier, you need to ensure that you do comply to the regulation. Otherwise, you will be liable for the fines that have been stipulated or that I have gone through. Then when you look at the EPC application process, so this is at very high level. It doesn't go quite deep within the different complexities, but it's just a process that one should be able to follow through up until they get that EPC or displayed at the entrance of their building, and also submit a certified copy to SANEDI as well. Also, just to add a disclaimer, is that this process is still under review. And that's because of the amendment regulation now introducing registered professionals. So in the near future, the process will change, and this is not the definite or final process. So just to take you through, so the first step is to determine if your building falls within the required occupancy classes and net floor area sizes. And if you have found that your buildings do, then you need to collect all the necessary data, which my colleague will take you through, and then register your building onto the National Building Energy Performance Register. And that below is the link that you can use to go onto the portal. Once you've registered your building, then you will then be required to now go through the EPC process by appointing a SANES accredited inspection body or registered professional, who will then have to conduct an energy performance assessment of your building. Thereafter, that professional or body will then conduct that assessment. Thereafter, they will then have to upload all the data that they've collected onto the National Building Energy Performance Register. whereby a unique number will be issued, and then they will be able to now issue that EPC to the building owner or accounting officer, who will then be required to display that EPC at the entrance of their building. Once received that EPC and they've displayed it, they must also ensure that you submit a certified copy within 3 months from date of issue. So it's quite important that we do receive this copy of the EPC so that we can have that data hosted within our register for compliance purposes and also for policy formulation as well. And then, as I had spoken about the departments conducting compliance monitoring, concurrently, they are going to be doing annual spot checks, compliance audits, to ensure that those EPCs are actually displayed at the entrance of their building. So please, if you already have an EPC that has been issued to you by a SANIS accredited inspection body, kindly ensure that it is displayed at the entrance of your building and a certified copy is submitted to SANEDI. Then, because EPCs are valid for 5 years, an initial renewal reminder will be sent through to the building owner or accounting officer to tell you now that you need to start the EPC process all over again. So it's a reminder so that you are given time to collect all the data or necessary information, as we know that a lot of things can happen between now and the end of 5 years. Thereafter, a final renewal reminder will be sent to you through the system to tell you now that you are left with 1 year to comply to the EPC, to update your EPC as the deadline of your EPC or your EPC is about to expire in the 5th year. So this is the process. It's quite straightforward, and we kindly ensure that whoever is liable to comply to the regulation complies by ensuring that they register their building and also by ensuring that they display and submit their EPC to SANEDI. Then, just to give you the landscape of the EPCs within this country, is that currently we have 1,952 EPCs issued to date. We have 1,399 certified copies submitted to SANEDI. We have 20 SANIS accredited inspection bodies. But when we talk about bodies, we are not talking about individuals, we are talking about entities. So within those entities, you may have multiple individuals who are competent in ensuring that EPCs are issued. So don't look at it at an individual level, but look at it at a institutional level, with having various individuals being able to issue EPCs within that institution. And then when you look at the consumption baseline, as you can see, this is based on 1,952 buildings that have EPCs. It shows you that already the baseline is at 3,356 gigawatt hours. So buildings play a huge role in the energy consumption of within South Africa, and we need to ensure that our buildings are actually energy efficient so that we don't face these issues that we are facing currently in terms of our electricity and our energy. Then when you look at the provincial footprints, most of the EPCs are issued within Gauteng with 1,097, followed by the Western Cape with 609, KwaZulu-Natal with 132. But we also consider the fact that the 3 main provinces that I had mentioned is where we have your economic hubs, and you will find most of the it will be densely populated. So most buildings will be situated within those 3 provinces. But we are aware that buildings within the other provinces are slowly trying to ensure that they have EPCs within their buildings as well. And then when you look at the occupancy classification, you have most of the buildings actually being office buildings at 68%, which is your G1. Then when you look at A3, which is your places of instruction, have 15%. Then you have your mixed occupancy classes. So this is the building that has more than one occupancy class within that building. So we have that at 11%, followed by your public assembly and entertainment areas. And then you have your theatrical and indoor sports, which would be your gyms and your theaters and your cinemas. And then also when you look at your voluntary EPCs, so when you talk about voluntary EPCs, we're talking about EPCs that are given to buildings or issued to buildings whose classifications are not within the regulation. So if maybe a building is a shopping center, as we know, shopping center does not fall within the 4 classifications, we regard it as a voluntary EPCs. Or if a building is less than the required size, net floor area, so if it's less than 1,000 square meters for a publicly owned or operated building, or less than 2,000 square meters for a privately owned building, we will classify those buildings as voluntary buildings which have EPCs. And then as you can see, in terms of the consumption baseline, we have buildings, we have the consumption baseline for buildings operating at G. So this is an energy efficiency scale for those who do not know. And this energy efficiency scale rates the efficiency of the building, with A being most efficient, D being the best practice or the optimum level at which a building should perform. And then E to G would be your inefficient buildings, with G being the most inefficient. So as you can see already, that buildings are actually, a lot of the buildings are actually performing at a G rate, having 2,050 gigawatt hours. So as you can see, this is a lot of consumption. Yes, it's not limited to electricity, and it is an energy mix. However, we need to ensure that in the future, we have this number limit going down and have more buildings being energy efficient. And that's the status of EPCs within South Africa currently. Then just to give you key takeaways is that the register is actually existing. However, we are developing an online portal. And as Mr. Yusuf had stated, that it's for ease of use as well, so that one can be able to sit in their office, go onto the system, inputs whichever data that they need to input or register their buildings. Building registration of the online portal is the only functionality which is live. So we prioritized it, and that is due to short compliance period, as you had seen that one needs to ensure that they register their building between now and the 2nd of August 2024. Manual processes are still being used for the EPC portion while we are trying to finalize the portal. Registration of buildings is compulsory. That means that building owners and accounting officers need to register the type and size of building onto the NBEPR within 12 months from date of promulgation, which was the 3rd of August. And then just to give an emphasis on this part is that it is the responsibility of the building owner or accounting officer to register their buildings onto the National Building Energy Performance Register. And lastly, failure to register your building will result in penalties, as it is a contravention of the National Energy Act. I have covered now the EPC portion, the background, and where it came from. And now I will hand it back to the moderator who will give us off to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nolo, for that informative presentation. Now we will move to our next speaker, who will then take us through the building registration process, as well as the data required for you to actually register your building onto our online NBPR. Mr. Leslie Ramaila, who's an energy practitioner under the EPC program. May you please take the floor? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Thank you once again for joining us today. My name is Leslie Ramaila, energy practitioner at SANERI. I will only focus on building registration process and data requirements. As it was indicated on the previous slide, it is the responsibility of the building owner or accounting officer to register their building on the system. I would like to encourage the building owners and accounting officer to take the first step by visiting our website. There's a link there on the website for registration of the building. On step 2, you have to populate all the information that is required, the type, the size, and the energy consumption of your building onto online system. And again, on step 3, the system will automatically verify the information that is populated and then issue you with the unique registration number. On the last step, the building owner or accounting officer shall select a suitable SANAS inspection body or to continue with EPC application process. On step 4, it's optional on the system. If you don't have inspection body appointed as yet, you can wait and then you have to go back once you appointed someone to do the EPC for your building. Please note, accounting officer or building owner have until the 2nd of August to register their building. Again, on data required to register onto the system will automatically issue unique building registration number. And then you have to populate the contact information for building owner. You have to populate name, surname, email address, telephone number, name and surname of alternative person, email address, telephone number. On this one, please make sure if you have appointed someone to register a building, you have to make sure that the information that is populated on the system is for building owner. Okay. Next one. Apologies. Then again, you have to populate the building occupancy information. Occupancy classes on the system, we stated all the occupancy classes. You have to select the one that your building falls under. Then again, this number of floors, size of building in meters squared, year of construction is optional as well. Year of building plan approval, optional. Date of occupancy certificate, optional as well. Year of major large renovation, optional as well. And then again, on building information, you have to populate the building entity type, a building ownership type, entity name, building name, address line 1, street name, address line 2, suburb, city, town, address line 3, postal code, address line 4, municipality, address line 5, province. On the system, we have stated all the provinces. And then again, you have to populate the billing type. It's either ESCOM or municipality. Again, you have to populate the type of the meter used, on your building. Is it prepaid meter or credit meter? And then you have to state if the building is smart metered or not. It's optional as well. Then again, you have to populate building energy sources, which is optional. Sometimes you may find that the building have maybe 4 sources of energy. It can be a liquid fuel, solar, it can be gas as well. Then again, you have to populate the building energy consumption of your building. Thank you for the opportunity, Chair. I'll hand over back to you.
Thank you, Leslie, for that presentation on the process steps on how to register your building on the NBPR. And now we're gonna take a 10 minutes break, or let's say a 5 minutes break, and be back by, or 10 minutes break, let's be back by 10 o'clock, and then we proceed with a guide and demonstration on the online platform. Thank you. So we'll be back at 10 o'clock. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, again. It's 10 o'clock. Now we will proceed. So we have went through the background of EPCs and why the NBPR was developed. We've went through the dashboard as well, where we stand on EPCs, and we also went through the registration process. Now we will move on to the demonstration where you actually register your building on the NBPR, which will be led by Ms. Mobile Nobo. Mobile, you may take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome once again, colleagues and attendees. So this will be a demonstration of the online portal. We also shared an email on Friday and this morning, which has a user manual, which you can use now and also in future as well. And it will guide you on how to use the portal, but it is a fairly straightforward and easy portal to navigate through. So using the link, which was on my presentation, I was able to land onto this page. So it should look like this, having Sanedi logo, email, password, and then the reCAPTCHA. So firstly, you will be required to register your profile. So if you have not used the system before, we require you to register your name, your surname, your email address, then you put in a password, confirmation of password, then we'll have the reCAPTCHA. And then as you can see as well, our privacy policy, which ensures that, which is in accordance to the promotion of access to information of 2000. Once you've now registered your profile, you will receive an email from EPC registration confirming your email address. Once you have confirmed that email address, you can then be able to come in here and click on log in. So I will log in my details. So as you can see, it does put highlights when you can see that you are not going in the right direction in terms of inputting your email address. Then you will use the password, which you now used in when you're registering your profile. Then you click on reCAPTCHA. Then it has taken me into the system. So this is what the portal looks like. So today we will be doing a simulation of registering the building. So as you can see, these are the steps here to my left. Let me just change my pointer. So as you can see, this is my spot, my steps. These are my steps here. So we have primary contact, alternative contact, entity information, building information, energy information, and occupant information. And once you've completed these 6 steps, you will then be able to submit your building and would have registered your building onto the NBPR. So as you can see, primary contact has actually been pre-populated based on the information I used to register my profile. And then here, as you can see, the icon is showing you that this is populated from your user details. So this will be pre-populated. Then you'll be able to put in your telephone number. Just remove this. And then you'll be able to go on to next. Then this will require you to put in your alternative contact details. So this would be the next person who will be able to access or should be able to be contacted. So put in the second person, then I'll put in my email here. And then as you can see, it will automatically add the second person as an alternative contact here. So this means that the other user that you have added will be able to have full view and be able to edit or add any information onto the buildings that you have registered. So you'll be able to have access to the same grid view and also be able to edit or add any information which will be required within the same organization. As you can see, this will be the alternative. So, and then this button here, we will go through in the next page. Then when you look at your entity information, so I will just put in here test. This will be the entity's name. Then as we had spoken about the SANIS accredited inspection body, so this here, you will actually put it in or you will add it once you've appointed a SANIS accredited inspection body. And then obviously when the registered professionals kick in, it will be registered professionals. So in the event whereby you are registering your building and you have not appointed a body, then you can leave it or you can select non-selected. Then you will select the kind of entity you are in. It's either a public entity or a private entity. So SANEC is a private public entity. Then you put in your building name, then you put in Tester building, 1, 2, 3, Test Streets, Sandton. Then you will be able to select the province in which that building is located. And then it's quite important that you also put this in. Note that if you put in 3 digits, it will not allow you to move on to the next step. So just to show you, you can see it must be a valid zip code. So you have to ensure that that zip code is 4 digits and is valid. Then you state the kind of ownership in that particular building that you are either owning, operating, or occupying. So do you own it? Or are you a tenant of it? Do you have a landlord? Are you the landlord? So stipulate that information as well, or select that information there. Then we go on to the energy information. So we want to now know, is your electricity, are you being billed by either Eskom or are you being billed by the municipality? So you would state here the billing type. Then you state the metering type. So this is the metering that comes from the billing authority. So is it prepaid or is it credit meter? And then in addition, you need to, it's optional information. You don't have to select it if you don't want to. However, we do want to know if your building is being smart metered or not. And this is for the purpose of now when an institution or an individual now wants to do that EPC for your building, they will be able to now know the kind of building that they are dealing with, and they know the kind of data that they have. So if a building is smart metered, it would obviously be easier for that professional or the inspection body to conduct or to get that information, because the information is, or the type is, the building is being smart metered. Then when you look at the energy usage per annum, we've made this optional. So this is as per your bills, your electricity bills. So is it either in kilowatt hours per annum or is it rands per annum? And then in the events whereby if you know that you have smart meter data, you are able to put this data here as well. And this is also to now assist the entity or the individual who will be doing this assessment to have an idea of how much or how much energy the building is consuming. As we all know that all buildings are grid tied. Then this is the period as well. So this goes hand in hand with the energy usage consumption per annum. So you need to state in which period did you use. It must be 12 consecutive months, and must have a period of at least 350 days. So I will just show you that if it has less than 350 days, it would not allow you to go through. So whichever assessment period you are using, it must have a minimum of 350 days between the start period and the end period. Okay, sorry, just delete this. Then we'll go over to our next part of the system. So you will have the occupancy information. So if you toggle over the icon here, it will give you a description of what the occupancy classification is. And it says per building plans or the occupancy certificates. If neither is available, then you must select it based on the function of your building. So we do require you to at least put one occupancy classification if you're not sure of the different occupancy classifications that you might have, or mean of all. So you should know at least of one, and then we will select here. You can select offices. You can select multiple at the same time. So just to show you, then you click on OK, and then as you can see, it allows you to select. Then it shows you that this is where school children assemble for the purpose of tuition or learning, and then standalone blocks and or a campus of buildings that form an office park but operate separately. So this is where you must select the occupancy classification of your building. Then when you toggle over here, the number of floors, it states that the ground floor should be included. So the number of floors, including the ground floor. Then the total area of the building, and this is per building plans or measurements. So if you've already measured the building, if available, it doesn't have to be 100% accurate. It can be an estimate, as that information will still be updated when one is getting an EPC for their building through the net floor area. And then this is the year of construction. This is optional because we do know you might not have this information on hand. Also with the year of building plan approval, we've made it optional. The dates of occupancy certificate, we've made it optional as well. However, if you do have it on hand, we do implore that you do add this information here. The year of last renovation is also optional. Then when you look at the cadastral information as well, we've made it a requirement. And this is because we want to ensure that we do not have a duplication of the same buildings being inputted into the register. So you can put in the cadastral information if you have, or you can actually state not available if you don't have on hand, and then you can still come back and add the information acquired it. Then you can then upload the building plans occupancy certificates here. So as you can see, this allows you to add the building floor plans, occupancy certificates. However, it's not a requirement if you do not have. And as I had stated before, this is to ensure that once you appoint that accredited body or that registered professional, that information will be on hand, and they would not have to go back and restart the data collection process, which you have already done prior. Then you can click on submit, finish to submit. Then it will allow you to now register your building, means that these buildings, your building has been registered onto the National Building Energy Performance Register. Then, as you can see, a building registration number has been allocated here. So my building registration number is 61. It shows my building name, it shows the province, it shows the entity, it shows the size of the building, floor size. Then these are the actions as well. So it means that I can actually come back and edit a building that I've already registered. So if I want to change any information, I can then use that functionality to edit. And then this is to register a new building with the same basic information. So that means if you have more than one building you want to register, as you can see, this information has already been populated. So I will not then be required to now re-put in who is the person who, the primary contact and the entity name and so forth. Then it will just take me here now to information that is restricted to a building. So the building name, the suburb, the city, the streets, the province, ownership type. And then as you can see, it will then take me to energy information and then occupants information as stipulated in the completion steps. Then you can then be able to view. So it will allow you to view all the buildings with EPCs, as you can see here. Search. As you can see, all my buildings don't have any EPC. So if I search for an EPC number, it will not show because there are no buildings with an EPC number. So this will be for any. Then I can also be able to go back. Yes, so if I go back, I am also allowed to download any information that I have, all the buildings that I've registered. Not sure. See my screen? Let me just show you the data that I was able to download. So it is showing me the building registration number, the building name, entity name. So you can have this on hand, and you are able to use this as well to maybe populate more buildings so that once we have the functionality of bulk upload, you are able to use such spreadsheets now to put onto the system and be able to upload a lot of buildings, because we do know that some institutions have hundreds, if not thousands of buildings within their entity, and such as your public works, who is the biggest landlord, and other institutions which would have a lot of buildings within their under their names. It will allow for bulk upload in the near future. So once you have reached this point where it says registered buildings, you have then complied to building registration, and now you have ticked that, and now will be required to now go into the EPC process, which we had spoken about prior. So I think I have come to the end of the demonstration, and I'll hand it back to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mabula, for that. Now we will proceed onto our Q&As. So I'll go through the chat, the Q&A box now. So we had some quite interesting questions, and I've just picked out a few. We have one from our esteemed advocate Nandipa, who is a professional within the energy sector. I would like to hand over her questions to Mr. Yusuf to take on this. Mr. Yusuf, can you take the questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much, moderator. Yes, I think most of our questions have been answered. Our questions are quite deep. I see the last one that says that she's not just a member of the public, she's also a professional within the sector, and we need to afford her that right to have input to those documents before they go public, which I do agree. So really put down a note on that. We're already having what you call smaller work groups ourselves, the DMI and other stakeholders addressing some of these requirements. But I do agree, we need all the inputs from professionals before it goes public for comments. What other questions are standing? Can you just help me, moderator? Is there any particular question of interest?
I'm trying to check right now. Looks like I'm struggling a bit with the questions. Okay. All right. We just had one now from Onda, who's asking, when they are now populating the consumption within the electricity consumption within the registration, should they now populate the last 12 months from the date of registration or estimate the 12 months to come due to consistency reasons? So I don't know if can you take that question?
I think if I'm trying to look at the question, EPC is measured data and not estimates. So you have to use measured data. The reason I'm asking this is, I'm just reading this. Reason I ask, no, stay there. The reason I ask is that some buildings will vary a lot and do not have consistency due to the number of reasons like the nature of use. I think EPC is measured data. We want to have metered data from your utility bills or a meter that is attached to the building. So I'd appeal that you keep it that way. In some cases, maybe if you have 10 months data and then you have some gaps, yes, I know we could do something around that, but we do not want any assumptions or over calculation. It should be metered data for 12 months and the most recent 12 months. I think we've even started communicating with stakeholders to say we do not want to see data beyond a certain point. You can help me with that date. I think we kept it to latest 2021 January. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes, so January 2021. But that is also something that comes to an end. It's just a grace period. But going forward, it should be 12 months of the most recent data sets you have on your measured data. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yusuf. And then we have another question from Nokubonga. In a case where I do not know the energy data as yet, can the system allow me to register and update the information at a later stage? Yes, you can register your building without the energy consumption. Then when you have it, you can then just update your energy data onto that particular building. So it does allow you to actually register your building because the energy data is actually not a requirement, but if you have it, you can populate it. So yes, you can proceed without the energy data. And then we have another question from Marius. So if you have a hall within a building, do you treat it as a separate building? Mr. Leslie, can you take this question? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It will be treated as multiple occupancy. It will depend if the building has maybe offices inside and the hall. It will be treated as multiple occupancy. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, just to quickly jump in there, it's a bit more complex in the sense that it depends on how that building is metered, how it is metered, how it's attached, the hall is attached to the offices. It could be multiple occupancy. The hall could be significant alone on its own if it's metered separately. So there's a bit of technicality there. So there's a possibility of multiple occupancy. There's a possibility of having separate EPCs. I think you want to supply more information on that question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I see that. It says under one roof. How about your metering point? One metering point for the office, for the hall and the office. And then, yes, correct. So that is then Leslie's very correct. It's a multiple occupancy. And then we'll look at how you apportion the size of the hall from the size of the office and its use of energy. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues, for that. And then we have a question from Maria. Where there are gaps, can average of the data available be considered? I see, Leslie, you were taking that question. May you proceed with your response? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. According to the regulation, the estimate is not allowed on the system. I mean, on the process of obtaining EPC. So you will have to have the data, the measured data. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Leslie,
To
for
add,
that answer.
yes, to add, I think there are good practices that allows us to do some level of calculation if we have a bit of missing data sets. But you have to be competent in that space to do those kind of calculations, and you have to state all of that within your report and within allowable limits.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Yusuf. And then we have a question from Simangele, which says, is it still a requirement to register your building on the NBPR if you already have an EPC and submitted a certified copy of your building to SANEDI? No, you do not need to register because we already have your details on our database. So when migrating the existing data onto the online platform, then all of the data on our database will be also migrated. So you do not need to register your building if you already have an EPC and submitted a certified copy of your building. And then I think that's it for the questions. But I'm not sure if Tebogo is still on the line because he raised a hand while one of our presenters was speaking. So I'm not sure if he can write his question on the Q&A so we can respond to it, since we are not having a live Q&A session with our participants. So if you can just write your question. Thank you.
Moderator, I'll just jump in quickly. There's some two questions at the end. One from, there's one around just before, yes, James. James says if we have any, yes.
Yes.
Let me take that quickly. We do not have an indication, but we are working very fast on that because we know it will allow the professionals and individuals to start to get ready. There are already documents sort of highlighting what to do, who to define, how to define them. I cannot give any indications, but it's major priority on our side and the side of the DMRE who's leading the process. So hopefully before we close for the year, we should have something around that. Then what to do on metered buildings. Look, this is my personal opinion. We still have time to comply to the regulation by December 2025. Get that building the smart meter, an appropriate meter for that building, meter it, and you can always show, and I'm talking from my own opinion, you can always show that you're already putting things in place to comply to the regulation. So you may miss the deadline for building registration, but I think it's a no-brainer if people see that you're already walking in that direction of complying to the ultimate regulation, which is getting your building certified. So I would appeal that you put the meter in place and maybe even write to the DMRE or Senedi, telling them what you're doing to comply to the regulation and what's hindering you. And then maybe we could treat that on a case-by-case basis. Yeah, I think that's all from the new questions. Thank you.
And
And
thank
Tiboko
you.
is also sorted. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Yusuf. I see there's a bit of a trend with questions regarding the presentation. So after the session, the presentation as well as the recording of the session will be distributed to all attendees, as well as the certificate of attendance will be sent in a week's time. So you will get the presentation as well as the recording of the session. Yeah, I think that's it on the questions. Now I'll hand over to Mr. Yusuf. Sorry. Now to hand over to Mr. Yusuf to close our session for us. You may take the floor, sir. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, moderator. Thank you, and brilliant session from yourself and the team, the EPC team at Senedi. As you are aware, stakeholders, this is our second session. The team have been pushing themselves to the limit. We had to improve upon what we've been doing by including webinars. You're going to have a lot of these webinars happen. I think public consultation is very key. We've really underplayed it over the past few years, but it's something that we're going to do very well. Like we've said, this training session or webinar session does not cover everything around EPCs. You still need to get trained. You need to read. You need to understand what EPCs are. A lot is changing in the EPC space very quickly. The regulation, my personal opinion, I'd like it to slow down a bit, but we'll ensure we keep on communicating and providing feedback to the industry around what is happening around EPCs. There are certain documents out there you can get your hands on the Senedi website. You can find the guideline on EPCs. Very good document for anyone to read, from non-technical to highly technical people. There's also a technical guideline being developed by the DMRE, Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. That document is being developed as we speak. It's going to be highly technical for technical people. We are going to have more of these sessions. I'm sure the new general manager for energy efficiency will carry on the tradition. So I would like you to keep communicating. Senedi is broad, massive. So many things we do at Senedi. Those are the email addresses of colleagues that deal with different things within Senedi around energy efficiency alone. I have not added the other colleagues that deal with other areas. So watch the website, watch this space, pay attention, ask your questions, send out your emails. We'll do our best to be there for you and ensure we do not confuse you. The last email at the bottom, Faith Makchawa, I hope I'm pronouncing that surname properly. She's the new general manager that will be taking over from tomorrow, the energy efficiency program. I'm going to stay very close to the industry, probably moving to a new program. So thank you so much for your time today. It's been brilliant having you on a Monday morning. God bless you and keep safe wherever you are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, colleagues. That is it from our side. The meeting is adjourned. Goodbye, everyone.